Sup guys, it's Alex here and welcome to another NCAA tournament bracketology video. This one is for January 10th, 2020, and after another crazy week of college basketball, we are here talking about the changes to the bracketology throughout the course of the week. Last night we had a double overtime game between Michigan and Purdue, and then we had an overtime game between Oregon and Arizona. I mean, that one was pretty close. So I was pretty happy with those games, being able to watch those, and just other games throughout the course of the week. My Kentucky Wildcats got a victory over Georgia. Memphis ended up losing to Wichita State last night too, so we don't want to overlook that. And yeah, without any further ado, let's go ahead and go region by region and look at the different bracketology updates and how the seedings are beginning to check out. And I think there are 11 out of 14 Big Ten teams in this tournament so far, so I'll have to double check and look. But that is just absolutely crazy. Big Ten doesn't have a team that's clear cut above the rest and would be a favorite to win their first national championship since like 2000 when Michigan State won it. But I mean, I think they're the deepest conference in the entire nation right now, so it'll be pretty interesting to see who ends up winning that and how that regular season checks out. Up here in the West Regional, we got Gonzaga remaining the 1 seed. Houston is now up to an 8. Rutgers, a surprise team who hasn't even finished above 500 since 2006, is now projected to be a 9 seed. They've been a huge surprise this season. Just got a huge road win, or I can't remember if it was a road win or home win, but either way, it was a huge win over Penn State, so congratulations if you're a Rutgers fan. Seton Hall is now up to a 5. The playing game there is between LSU and Purdue at the 11. UC Santa Barbara is new to the field at 14. Wisconsin is now up to a 7, and Omaha is new to the field as a 15. Then if we go over here to the East Regional, we have Duke as the 1. Florida now up to an 8, Michigan down to a 5, even after pulling off the victory against Purdue. I guess there must be some other bracket shakeups. Then we got Duquesne, I think is how you pronounce it. This is the first time they've made it to the field. I think they've only lost like 1 or 2 games this season. They've been pretty impressive out of, I want to say, the A10. I'm not 100% sure there. They are new to the field as the 12. Then we got Villanova up to a 4. New Mexico State new to the field as a 13. Then we got Colorado moving up to a 7 and Montana moving up to a 15. They were a 16 in last week's bracketology. Then if we go down to the Midwest Regional in Indianapolis, I'll probably be going to those games. So hopefully we'll be able to get a vlog, and hopefully I'll be able to see some good games in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. We got Butler remaining the 1. Texas Tech is now down to an 8. Ohio State is down to a 4 after Texas Tech lost to Baylor, and Ohio State lost to Maryland over the course of the week. Penn State also moves down to a 6 after losing to Rutgers, as I mentioned previously. NC State and Washington remains in the playing game. That hasn't changed from the Tuesday bracketology. Virginia is now down to a 10 after losing to Boston College. I watched the end of that game, and man, Virginia's offense just looks absolutely horrible. I mean, I'm sure I'll have Creighton winning that game because I can't trust them right now to even produce on the offensive end. Their defense is good, is elite as always, but their offense is way behind what they should be. And then over here in the South Regional, we got Kansas as the 1, Iowa down to an 8, Xavier down to a 9, Northern Iowa new to the field as the 12, Arkansas up to a 6, which is pretty impressive for that squad with Eric Musselman leading the charge. Indiana down to an 11, Florida State up to a 3, Little Rock up to a 14, Marquette is now down to a 7. I think they lost to Providence this week. And we got Oklahoma up to a 10. And then I'll go and show you guys the bubble. I know last time I saved it for the very end because I forgot, and I was wrong. There are 10 out of 14 Big Ten teams in the tournament, which is just absolutely crazy right there. ACC only has 5, which is also crazy. Same with the SEC and Pac-12 and Big 12. Big Ten is just taking the charge. So we got last 4 byes on the bubble. Oklahoma, Virginia, Indiana, VCU. Virginia is making their way onto the bubble. That's a surprise for the reigning national champions. Last 4 in are LSU, Purdue, Washington, and NC State. First 4 out are Illinois, Georgetown. Illinois would have been that 11th team. Georgetown, Oklahoma State, and DePaul. And then the next 4 out are USC, Georgia, Utah State, and St. John's. So as you guys know, I do a bracketology thing with the Excel because I haven't figured out a way to do something similar to the Brackified where we can do logos and stuff to make it more visually appealing. But this is the only way I can figure out how to actually fill out NCAA tournament brackets without just kind of like moving my hand around and kind of figuring out something weird. But up first we have Gonzaga versus Princeton. That one's pretty obvious. We're going to have Gonzaga winning that one. Then we have Houston and Rutgers. I'm actually going to go with Rutgers getting their first NCAA tournament win since like 1991 or something crazy like that. And that's also our first upset with an item number 8. Then we have Miles Powell and Seton Hall moving past Akron. Louisville, I think, will be able to get the victory there over Charleston. Then I'm going to go with another upset here. I'm going to go with Purdue beating LSU and then beating Memphis in the first round. Memphis, without James Wiseman, has just not been looking very impressive. Their marquee win over Tennessee is getting worse by the day. And then overall, they're just not looking like a good team. The game, it was a 76-67 game against Wichita State, and that score made it seem closer than it actually was. Oregon, I think, will be able to beat UC Santa Barbara. Wisconsin, I think, they've been kind of a surprise. I kind of counted them out earlier in the season, so I apologize if you're a Wisconsin fan. But I think they'll be able to beat Stanford right there. I'm sorry I counted them out too early. That huge win over Tennessee, and then the 1 point, I think it was a 1 point loss at home to Illinois. They were still pretty impressive in that one. Illinois was just a little bit more. And we got San Diego State, one of the only 2 undefeated teams remaining in the nation with Auburn. They're moving on past Omaha. Then we're going to have Butler beating the winner of Robert Morris and Prairie View A&M. I don't know enough about either to make a prediction on that. Then I think that Chris Beard and Texas Tech, after they made the national championship game last year, I think they get the victory there over BYU, and they had beaten Louisville earlier in the season. That's why it gives me a little bit more confidence. Arizona and Furman, I can easily see Furman pulling off the upset there, but I'm going to go with Arizona with Nico Mannion. They really impressed me last night watching them against Oregon. That was a great game to watch. Then we got Ohio State beating Wright State. I can see Wright State pulling off the upset there, but I mean, obviously I'd have more confidence with Ohio State winning that one. Penn State, I think, will beat the winner of NC State and Washington, which I think would be Isaiah Stewart and Washington, even though Claude Green, who plays for Washington, their point guard, just got ruled academically ineligible, so it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens with that. And we got West Virginia beating Colgate. Then I'm going to have Creighton beating Virginia. I know I've had Virginia winning their first-round matchup in almost every bracketology so far, but I just can't go with them winning that one game right there. And we're going to have Auburn beating Winthrop. Then if we go up to the top right section of the bracket, sorry, I'm going to have to do this manually and stuff like that, but we're going to make it work. Go ahead and show you guys the seeds a little bit too. Move it. There we go. We have Duke versus the winner of Norfolk State and Quinnipiac. Obviously, we're going to have Duke winning that matchup there. Florida State and St. Mary's, I think this one's going to be pretty interesting to see, but I think Kerry Blackshear and Florida move on. Then Michigan and Duquesne. I got Michigan with Juwan Howard moving on, though I can easily see a 5-over-12 upset happening there. Villanova, I think, will beat New Mexico State. Then we got Kentucky beating Liberty. I know I mentioned every single bracketology that Liberty is one of my favorite mid-major teams, and I can easily see them beating the inconsistent Kentucky Wildcats, as much as I hate to admit it. But in this scenario, I think Kentucky's going to be able to get their crap together by March and be able to beat Liberty. Then we got Maryland beating Stony Brook. They were really impressive against Ohio State. And we got Colorado, I think, will be able to beat VCU. Then if we scroll down a little bit further, we're going to have Baylor beating Montana. Then we're also going to have Kansas beating Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic is now the representative of, I want to say it's either the Sun Belt or the Conference USA, can't remember. Then we got Iowa versus Xavier. I think this one was one of the most evenly matched up matchups, I guess. I don't know how you would say it, but I'm going to have Xavier winning that one. Wichita State, I think, will beat Northern Iowa. Dayton will beat Stephen F. Austin, though I can easily see Stephen F. Austin winning that matchup. Then we're going to have Arkansas and Indiana. I think these two teams played earlier this season, and I want to say Arkansas won, so why not keep going with those results and go with Arkansas winning there? Plus, I think they're the better team over Indiana at this point in time. Florida State, I think, will beat Little Rock. Then we're going to have Marcus Howard and Marquette beat Oklahoma. Then we're going to have Michigan State beat Murray State. So then for a spot in the Sweet 16, we are going to move up to the top left regional portion of the bracket. And at first, we're going to have Gonzaga versus Rutgers. And obviously, I'm going to go with Gonzaga winning there. I think Rutgers, great season. Their best season their best season in like 20 years, I think will come to an end at that point right there. Seton Hall and Louisville, I think this game would be really interesting to see. But I like Louisville moving on past Seton Hall. I think they're a better and more well-rounded team. They don't just have that one superstar. And they have Jordan Ora to match Miles Powell. And I think they're a better team with their depth. I think Peyton Pritchard and Oregon are going to move past the winner of LSU and Purdue, which I said would be Purdue. We got San Diego State moving on past Wisconsin to move on to the Sweet 16. Then we're also going to have Butler face off against Texas Tech, and obviously I think Butler's going to win that one. Butler's been a really impressive team so far this season. Arizona and Ohio State. I'm actually going to go with Arizona moving on there as the 5 seed. They look really impressive against Oregon, and I also watched the Ohio State-Maryland game, and Ohio State was just not impressive in that one. We got Penn State and West Virginia. This one is be really interesting for me. 6 versus a 3, but I'm going to go with Bob Huggins and his experience in the NCAA tournament with West Virginia moving on, and then Auburn would beat Creighton. So then if we go up to the top right regional, we are going to have, and I say like top right regionals because they're like the Midwest, South, North, those are all going to change over the course of the season. We are going to have Duke move on past Florida. Then Michigan, this is a rematch of the championship game a couple years ago. I can't remember what it was. But I think Villanova will move on past Michigan there with Jay Wright. His experience in the NCAA tournament just is more than Juwan Howard has, obviously, with Michigan. Kentucky and Maryland. As much as I want to pick Kentucky moving on past Maryland there, Maryland just got a marquee win against Ohio State, and I'm going to have to go with them. Plus, they're just more complete team at this point. Baylor, I think, will move on past Colorado. Then if we go down to the top or the bottom right regional, we're going to have Kansas versus Xavier. I think Kansas is going to win that one. Obi Toppin and Dayton will fall to Wichita State. Wichita State's been really impressive. I think they've only lost one time this season. I think they get past Dayton, though Dayton is one of my favorite teams. I just don't like that matchup right there. Then I'm going to go with Florida State beating Arkansas. I really like Florida State this season. Went on the road to Louisville and beat them. And then their loss to Pittsburgh earlier this season is not looking as bad as it did whenever that happened. Then Michigan State, I think, will beat Marquette. As much as I'd love to pick Marquette moving on past Michigan State with Marcus Howard there, I don't think they get the job done. And I know I've been going with a lot of chalk recently, but keep watching. We'll kind of see what happens as it goes along. Gonzaga, I think, will beat Louisville. And then I'm going to go with Oregon also beating San Diego State to move on to the Elite Eight. There we go, Gonzaga versus Oregon. Then if we go down to the bottom right regional for the regional championship in the Elite Eight, Arizona and Butler. I'm actually going to go with Arizona here. The first number 1 seed to fall will be Arizona, though I can easily see Butler winning that game. Butler just I haven't seen them play, so I can't really comment on them too much right now, but they have a pretty good game against Providence happening tonight, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. West Virginia and Auburn. I'm going to go with the undefeated Auburn Tigers moving on there, and then we'll keep it right here for the bottom right portion of the bracket, Kansas and Wichita State. I'm actually going to go with another upset here. Number 1 seed to fall, Kansas is going down. They face Baylor this weekend. It'll be a great game to watch. I'm going to go with Wichita State winning that one, and then Michigan State pulling off the victory there against Florida State. Then if we go up to the top right portion of the bracket, we'll have Duke versus Villanova, and I think Duke's going to end up winning that one. Vernon Carey's playing like a National Player of the Year contender. And then I'm going to go with Baylor beating Maryland. Baylor's been really impressive this season. As I mentioned earlier, they have that win against Texas Tech on the road this week, and then they go and play Kansas this weekend, so that'll be interesting to see. If they beat Kansas, I'm sure they'll be a number 1 seed by the time next week's Bracketology rolls around. So for a spot in the Final Four, we have Gonzaga versus Oregon. I'm actually going to go with Oregon with Peyton Pritchard moving on here. Oregon's going to be really battle-tested by the time the tournament rolls around, and Gonzaga will not be, as always, with the Western Coast Conference, which means Duke, I think, will also beat Baylor right here, though I can easily see Baylor with their depth and talent. I think Duke is just more talented at this point, which means Duke would be the only number 1 seed in the Final Four, which probably won't happen. But Arizona and Auburn, I'm going to go with Auburn. They are undefeated at this point, and I haven't been giving them the respect they deserve. I will admit that, though they did have a close call against Vanderbilt this week, so we got to keep an eye on that. Then Wichita State and Michigan State, I'm going to pick Cassius Winston and Michigan State moving on to the Final Four. So in the Final Four, we'll have Oregon versus Auburn, which I think Oregon will end up winning that game with Peyton Pritchard. I think that Auburn will probably end up falling down the stretch, and they aren't as talented. I think Oregon has a guy named like Fonte or Dante. I can't remember what it was at this point, but I think they'll be able to get the job done there. And then I think that Duke will end up beating Michigan State just like they did earlier this season, and then which sets up an Oregon versus Duke national championship game, which would be pretty interesting to see Peyton Pritchard face off against Trey Jones. But at this point, I really got to give it to Duke. As much as I hate to do it as a Kentucky fan, I think Duke's been the best team so far this season, and I think they get the job done there. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Be sure to react to my predictions and stuff in the comment section below. Leave your own in the comment section too. Like and subscribe if you are new, and I'm going to be giving out tournament details for the NCAA tournament ticket giveaway at the beginning of February if I get to 5,000 subscribers. So make sure you're subscribed for that. Make sure you like this video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you all later.